Welcome, I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the May 2020 Astrology Forecast. I'm a professional astrologer and magician living in Los Angeles, California. Today, we'll talk about the trends for May, but before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons who are loyally supporting all of this video, astrology, and magical content. For those of you who are not yet patrons, you can become one at patreon.com/Nina Griffin. You'll get very early access to all of my videos, and in the higher tiers, you'll get access to exclusive videos and other astrology and magic content not available to the general public. Well, first, let me tell you about the theme of this month. That theme is entering the Carnival. This month, we have 3 classical planets moving retrograde almost simultaneously. And it's pretty rare that that happens. Usually we have 1 or 2 planets that happen to be retrograde at any given time, but here we have 3 of them turning retrograde within just a few days. So this is significant, and it does foretell a new phase in our personal lives, as well as in our collective lives and well-being. Now, let me talk a little bit about the meaning of the Carnival. This is an ancient festival that actually precedes the Christian Carnival or Mardi Gras. It is really the season of license where everything is permitted. For a brief period, you can do whatever you want. If you are a master, you can act as a servant. If you are a woman, you can act as a man. You can do whatever you want so long as you are breaking the rules and doing things completely opposite from what's allowed during the rest of the year. Now, the planetary retrograde period we're about to enter will have some of these carnivalesque characteristics, and we'll talk about it more as we get to that part of May. The first week of May starts out pretty tame. We have a Sun-Mercury conjunction at 14 degrees Taurus. Now, this is going to be a news cycle for Mercury. He will become an evening star, which means that he will rise after the sun. Planets that are rising after the sun, also known as occidental planets, are a little bit more passive, have a slower and more interior quality than planets that rise before the sun. So I'm talking about kind of a yin quality to these occidental planets versus a yang quality for oriental planets that rise before the sun. Now, Mercury in Taurus, just by itself, is going to be pretty pragmatic, pretty deliberate, peace-loving, does not like to make waves, and will not be rushed. This is because Taurus, of course, is a fixed earth sign, but also because Taurus is ruled by Venus, who just wants harmony and peace, and ultimately a lot of that comes from keeping things as they are. Now, Mercury is going to experience I would say, sort of a stubborn period as he goes through Taurus. Essentially, he does not like to be pushed, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But during this period, I think we'll see a lot of people perhaps wanting, things to reopen and all of that, but we're going to see an equally strong and perhaps even stronger sense of resistance to that. Mercury in Taurus really likes to do things on his own time and at his own pace. Now, as we enter the second week of May, things start getting extremely interesting very fast. So this is the week where we have 3 planets turning retrograde literally within 4 days of each other. May 10th, Saturn turns retrograde at 1 degree Aquarius. May 12th, Venus turns retrograde at 12 Gemini. And May 14th, Jupiter turns retrograde at 27 Capricorn. So it's going to be quite a quick succession of planets turning retrograde. So to deeply understand the meaning of this period, let's talk about the meaning of retrograde planets. So retrograde motion has 3 characteristics. 1, it's reaching back into the past, trying to recapture previous circumstances. It's really about pulling in threads from the past to try to turn them into the present or the future. This is usually a temporary and futile experiment because, as you know, retrogradation is actually just a temporary phenomenon. However, it doesn't mean people don't keep trying. The second characteristic of retrograde motion is it has a distorting and funhouse quality. You can think of it as a parody of accepted norms, And this is really the Carnivalesque element to it. It's kind of like these planetary qualities are going to be there as they are when the planets are direct, but they're going to be distorted like in a funhouse mirror. It's them, but something is definitely wrong. The third quality of retrograde motion is that it warps the usual flow of events and time. So you might see sudden or unexpected events, or events that are expected to occur will not. So here are the characteristics of this particular retrograde period, given the types of planets that are going retrograde. So Jupiter, of course, rules money, so he rules economic and political power, as well as just general optimism. So when he goes retrograde, there is a push to try to bring things back to how they used to be. And this lasts until about mid-September when he turns direct. Saturn represents, on the one hand, the poorest people in society, manual laborers, farmers, people who might be considered essential workers during the pandemic, but also, on the other hand, powerful old men. Now, I'm not talking about people necessarily at the head of government, but these are the people who make backroom deals, whether in business or in politics, who are really there to stay, who are long-term players in all these different fields. So his retrograde impacts all of these folks as well, and this planet will be retrograde until late September. Now, Venus, of course, represents pleasure, entertainment, and social contact. She'll be retrograde the shortest amount of time, until late June, but it is rare for her to be retrograde, so I think that her retrograde often packs a punch that is outsized to its duration. So what I think happens as we get into the middle of May is we do our best to act like we're getting back to normal. You know, we start reopening businesses, we start doing this and that, but it really won't be the same. And that's the funhouse mirror element of it, where we kind of try to make things feel normal, but it won't be the same. And I think a lot of it isn't just the social distancing that will have to continue to some extent, even in public places. A lot of it will be just that inner sense of uncertainty and of the unknown. You know, are we going to get a second or third or fourth wave of a disease? This is something that will be at the back of everybody's mind, knowing that whatever we do now is just contingent and temporary. So I think if you're going to be using this time wisely, you'll position yourself even now as the planets are retrograde for the new normal that will become undeniable in September as the superior planets go direct. In other words, you will use this time to reevaluate what you would do differently, but also recognize that this is just a temporary, maybe a respite until September or so. People who are not using this time wisely will basically go on forward and in denial of reality. They will pretend that things are the same as they were, that the levers of power are the same as they were, not recognizing that the ground has already shifted and is going to shift even more dramatically as fall begins. Now, the second week of May, as if that weren't enough, Mercury also enters Gemini on the 11th, and Gemini is a diurnal or yang sign, so Mercury will be pressured to act. Now remember, he is still occidental of the sun, so he's more passive and slow. But now he's going to be in this masculine diurnal sign, and Mercury is business. So business will very much be raring to go this middle of May, and I expect that politicians who have a strong mercurial quality as well will largely exceed. Mercury in Gemini is in his own sign. And so there is a real sense that what we really need now is to do business, get business going, sign things, make deals, make up for lost time. May 13th, Mars will enter Pisces, which means that he finally breaks his co-presence with Saturn. And this is something that we've really been dealing with for several months now. First, Mars and Saturn were in Capricorn together, not in a conjunction the whole time, but still acting on each other, still that concentrated malefic energy in a single sign. And then they entered Aquarius very close together as well, so they were co-present too. Again, they broke that conjunction by orb in the middle of April, which is interestingly when we started to have discussions around opening up the economy, and we're starting to look forward a little bit. But really, it's going to be a lot more tangible once Mars enters Pisces. It really feels like we will have turned the page and entered a new chapter, to use that book metaphor. Now, Mars gains some essential dignity as he rules the water triplicity. So he's going to gain community support. He doesn't have a lot of strength, but Mars is really, in triplicity, is going to have a lot of followers and a lot of helpers. So I think this will be a good time for communities to collaborate on beating the disease. Now, in the third week of May, Mercury will emerge from the sun's beams, and that will be around the 18th. What this means is that Mercury will have his heliacal rising, which happens around 15 degrees before the sun. And as Mercury had gone through his conjunction with the sun, he was invisible. He was blocked by the sun's rays. But once he gets far enough from the sun, he emerges into his own power, into his own visibility. This is a very powerful moment for a planet. And for Mercury to experience that, especially when in his own sign in Gemini, it's incredibly empowering for business, for all things that have to do with Mercury. Studies, school, learning, languages, communication, all that stuff just goes completely, I don't want to say exactly haywire, but it's going to be just really, really potent. Now, I am using this time as well for a magical election. So for those of you interested in astrological talismans, please be sure to listen to the podcast, the Magical Astrology Podcast, episode 12, where I discuss this phenomenon in more detail. You can also purchase the Magical Elections ebook for May, where this is highlighted because it's such a wonderful election for Mercury in Gemini. Now, we are going to be in this period where Mercury just really wants to go full force forward. But it's really not up to him. There are superior planets, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, whose movements primarily dictate the broad outlines of the pace. So, there'll be a tendency for business to kind of outrun the reality of what's needed here. Now, May 20th is also the new moon in Gemini, and it'll be trine Saturn in Aquarius. We can think of this as a new start for Saturnian people, so our essential workers, but also our powerful old men. And the workers will there could be important brights, and also you will get kind of a mass of people going back to work around this time. It's fundamentally, I would say, a conservative trine to the new moon. This is really about trying a new start that helps, or attempts, I should say, conserve things as they have been. Successfully or not, that's a different story. May 22nd, Mercury conjoins Venus retrograde at 20 Gemini. And this is really going to be I would say, an opening, a cautious opening perhaps, of some artistic, social, and similar Venusian venues. Again, this is about business, but it's now going to be about pleasure, so you might see more restaurants and things like that opening, again, probably cautiously. The final week of May, we have really one major event, and that's May 28th when Mercury enters Cancer. So travel, I think, will see a pickup in activity at the end of May. In the United States, this is going to be a holiday weekend. And the moon is a traveler, so she rules Cancer. So Mercury in Cancer will travel for business as well as for pleasure right now. I think you're starting to see some braver people going on flights for various reasons, family, vacations, or business. All right. So this is it for the May 2020 forecast. I hope that you enjoyed it. And again, if you would like to become a patron, I'd be appreciative. In any case, I hope that you subscribe to future videos. Thanks. I'm Nina Griffin, and I'll talk to you soon.